On a January evening in 1993, over 18 million American households tuned their television sets to local syndicated stations to watch a black commander stand on the deck of a space station mourning his wife while raising his son alone. The opening shot of Star Trek Deep Space Nine's pilot, Emissary, broadcast on January 3, 1993, registered an 18.8 Nielsen rating, the highest number ever recorded for a syndicated series premiere. Avery Brooks stood in front of that camera as Commander Benjamin Sisko, the first African-American lead in Star Trek's 27-year history, and something fundamental about American television shifted. That premiere was merely the first domino to fall in a year that would see broadcast networks pushed to their breaking point, late-night television torn apart and rebuilt, and a Japanese children's show transform American playgrounds into martial arts arenas. The calendar year 1993 would deliver more seismic shifts to television than any 12-month period before or since. The winter of 1993 opened with Star Trek Deep Space Nine, challenging everything audiences expected from Gene Roddenberry's optimistic franchise. Executive producer Rick Berman faced a practical constraint that shaped the entire series. With The Next Generation still on the air, he could not create another show about a starship exploring the galaxy. Instead, Berman and co-creator Michael Piller stationed their characters on a battered Cardassian mining platform orbiting the war-torn planet Bajor. The setting allowed something unprecedented in Trek: characters who disagreed, who distrusted each other, who carried wounds from occupations and wars. Major Kira Nerys, played by Nana Visitor, had been a resistance fighter. Security Chief Odo, performed by René Auberjonois, was a shapeshifter with no knowledge of his own origins. The Ferengi bartender Quark, brought to life by Armin Shimmerman, operated his establishment directly on the station's promenade. Brooks himself pushed for changes to Benjamin Sisko's portrayal that reflected his understanding of representation. In interviews, the actor spoke about reading the pilot script and recognizing a man dealing with loss, having to raise a child, indeed, a male child, by himself, and be brown as we spin this tale in the 20th century about the 24th century. The father-son relationship between Sisko and his son Jake, played by Cirroc Lofton, became central to the series in ways that directly countered harmful stereotypes about black fathers in American media. 3 weeks after Deep Space Nine premiered, Michael Jackson stood alone in the center of the Rose Bowl field in Pasadena, California. The date was January 31, 1993, and Super Bowl 27 had just entered halftime with the Dallas Cowboys leading the Buffalo Bills. Jackson emerged from beneath the stage to the opening notes of Jam, wearing a black military-style outfit and gold-rimmed sunglasses. For 90 seconds, he stood completely motionless while the crowd of 98,374 screamed. Then he launched into Billie Jean, executing the moonwalk on a platform that seemed to hover above the field. The halftime show drew 133.4 million American viewers, more than the game itself. For the first time in Super Bowl history, ratings actually increased between the two halves. The NFL had booked Jackson specifically because Fox had counter-programmed the previous year's halftime with a live episode of In Living Color, stealing 22 million viewers from CBS. Jackson received no payment for his performance, per league policy, but the NFL donated $100,000 to his Heal the World Foundation. The modern Super Bowl halftime spectacle, the era of major pop stars commanding the stage, began that January night in Pasadena. 10 days later, on February 10, 1993, Jackson granted his first television interview in 14 years. Oprah Winfrey broadcast live from his Neverland Ranch estate in Santa Ynez Valley, California, in a 90-minute ABC primetime special. The cameras showed Winfrey walking through the property's private amusement park and zoo before settling into Jackson's private theater for the conversation. 90 million people worldwide watched what remains the most viewed television interview in American broadcast history. 62 million American viewers, according to AC Nielsen, saw Jackson confirm for the first time that he suffered from vitiligo, a skin disorder causing loss of pigmentation. "I am a black American," Jackson stated to Winfrey. "I'm proud to be a black American. I am proud of my race. I am proud of who I am." He also acknowledged for the first time publicly that his father, Joe Jackson, had beaten him as a child. Elizabeth Taylor appeared via satellite to defend her friend against tabloid characterizations. Within weeks of the interview and the Super Bowl performance, sales of Jackson's Dangerous album reportedly increased by 83%. While Jackson dominated February's headlines, NBC's Thursday night comedy lineup was quietly executing the most consequential programming shift of the decade. Seinfeld had struggled for 3 seasons, never cracking the top 40 in annual ratings. Season 4, airing throughout 1993, brought episodes that would define the series. The Outing, which aired on February 11th, introduced the phrase, "not that there's anything wrong with that," into the American lexicon when Jerry and George were mistakenly identified as a gay couple by a newspaper reporter. The Contest, which had aired in November 1992, won Larry David the Emmy for Outstanding Writing, despite never using the word masturbation in an episode entirely about masturbation. The critical shift happened when Ted Danson announced that Cheers would end after 11 seasons. NBC moved Seinfeld from its Wednesday slot to Thursdays at 9:30 p.m., directly following television's most beloved sitcom. The Cheers series finale, One for the Road, aired on May 20th, 1993, drawing between 80 and 93 million viewers, the second most watched finale in television history, behind only MASH. Jay Leno broadcast The Tonight Show live from the Bull and Finch pub in Boston, the bar that inspired the series, immediately after the finale aired. Shelley Long returned as Diane Chambers for the final episode, and 40% of American televisions were tuned to NBC that Thursday night. When September arrived, NBC gave Seinfeld the 9 p.m. anchor position that Cheers had occupied. The gamble paid off spectacularly. By the following season, Seinfeld would become the #1 show in America. The late-night television landscape fractured completely in the summer of 1993. David Letterman had expected to inherit The Tonight Show after Johnny Carson's retirement in May 1992. Carson himself reportedly supported Letterman as his successor. Instead, NBC chose Jay Leno. Letterman announced his departure on January 14, 1993, and his final late-night episode aired on June 25th. Tom Hanks was the last guest. Bruce Springsteen performed an extended version of Glory Days, climbing atop Paul Shaffer's keyboard rig during the finale. Letterman declared himself NBC Employee of the Month as he walked off the set. CBS paid $14 million per year, double his NBC salary, and spent over $140 million renovating the Ed Sullivan Theater to house the new Late Show with David Letterman. The premiere on August 30th, 1993, attracted 23 million viewers. Bill Murray arrived as the first guest, spray painting what was meant to be Dave on Letterman's desk before the can ran out, leaving only DA. Paul Newman wandered on stage asking, "Where the hell are the singing cats?" a joke referencing the theater's previous tenant, the musical Cats. 2 weeks later, on September 13, 1993, a 30-year-old former Simpsons writer named Conan O'Brien walked onto the late-night set that Letterman had vacated. O'Brien had served as president of the Harvard Lampoon, written for Saturday Night Live, and penned the Simpsons episode Marge vs. the Monorail. He had approximately 40 seconds of on-camera television experience. NBC and producer Lorne Michaels had auditioned Jon Stewart, Drew Carey, and Paul Provenza for the position. Dana Carvey and Gary Shandling both declined offers. John Goodman served as O'Brien's first guest and received a commemorative medal. The critical reception was brutal. Washington Post television critic Tom Shales suggested the host resume his previous identity, Conan Oblivion. Reviewers described O'Brien as nervous, fidgety, and too tall. By 1994, NBC threatened to put him on a week-to-week contract. Head writer Robert Smigel later revealed that the show was basically canceled before executives changed their minds in August of '94. Andy Richter, upgraded from writer to sidekick just weeks before the premiere, joked about reminding myself what it's like to be unemployed during the uncertain stretches. The fall of 1993 transformed children's television permanently. 2 weeks before O'Brien's Rocky debut, on August 28, 1993, Fox Kids aired the first episode of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Producer Haim Saban had spent 8 years pitching the concept after discovering Japanese Super Sentai footage while channel surfing in a Tokyo hotel room. Fox Kids executive Margaret Loesch was reportedly told by her own boss that she was playing her career by greenlighting the series. Saban's production model was ingeniously economical. Expensive action sequences featuring masked heroes fighting rubber-suited monsters were licensed directly from the Japanese series Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger and dubbed into English, while separate scenes featuring American teenagers were filmed in Los Angeles. Within 3 weeks, Power Rangers became the top-rated children's television series in America, capturing 45% of viewers aged 6 to 11. By Christmas 1993, stores could not keep Bandai's action figures in stock. The franchise generated over $1 billion in merchandise revenue by 1995. The same September 13th that saw Conan O'Brien's troubled premiere also brought Animaniacs to Fox Kids. Executive producer Steven Spielberg, fresh from directing Schindler's List, shepherded a cartoon about three siblings of indeterminate species who had been locked in the Warner Brothers water tower since the 1930s. Voice actors Rob Paulsen, Jess Harnell, and Tress MacNeille brought Yakko, Wakko, and Dot to life in a variety show format that layered adult humor beneath children's entertainment. The series won 8 Daytime Emmy Awards during its run, including honors for its theme song and animation. 8 days after Animaniacs and Conan premiered, ABC broadcast television's first self-described R-rated drama. NYPD Blue debuted on September 21, 1993 at 10 p.m. Eastern, with creators Stephen Bachko and David Milch pushing broadcast standards further than any series before. The pilot opened with Dennis Franz's Detective Andy Sipowicz screaming profanity at a district attorney while grabbing his own crotch. Dimly lit scenes showed partial nudity. ABC Entertainment president Bob Iger reportedly spent meetings with Bachko drawing crude anatomical pictures like 2 9-year-old schoolboys to determine exactly how much could be shown. 57 ABC affiliates, representing less than 10% of American households, refused to broadcast the premiere. The American Family Association's Donald Wildman organized a letter-writing campaign to every company that advertised on network television. ABC reportedly lost an estimated $2 million in advertising revenue per episode during the first season, filling commercial breaks with movie promos and distressed merchandise at 10% of normal rates. More than 30 million Americans watched some portion of the premiere anyway. The controversy, as Bachko later acknowledged, served as free advertising. He reportedly joked that he owed Wildman a bottle of wine. NYPD Blue earned a record 27 Emmy nominations for its first season, a mark that stood until Game of Thrones surpassed it in 2019. Dennis Franz won Outstanding Lead Actor, beating his own co-star David Caruso. 3 days after NYPD Blue's controversial debut, ABC's TGIF lineup welcomed Boy Meets World on September 24, 1993. Creator Michael Jacobs built the series around 11-year-old Ben Savage as Corey Matthews, deliberately making the middle child, rather than the eldest, the protagonist. William Daniels, initially reluctant to commit to a sitcom, portrayed teacher and neighbor George Feeney. Ryder Strong played Corey's troubled best friend Sean Hunter, while Danielle Fishel appeared as the eccentric Topanga Lawrence. The pilot drew 16.5 million viewers, and the series ran for 7 seasons. The fall premiere that seemed least likely to survive became arguably the most influential. The X-Files debuted on Fox on Friday, September 10, 1993, at 9 p.m., a time slot the network considered a graveyard. Creator Chris Carter, a former Surfing magazine editor, had pitched the series after reading a report claiming 3.7 million Americans believed they had been abducted by aliens. Fox initially rejected the concept before Carter returned with additional research. David Duchovny's audition impressed Carter despite the actor speaking so slowly that Carter initially wondered if Duchovny wasn't bright. Gillian Anderson was 24 years old when cast as Dana Scully. Fox executives reportedly wanted someone taller, leggier, blonder, and breastier. Carter insisted Anderson possessed the kind of no-nonsense integrity that the role required. The pilot drew 7.4 million households, enough to rank 105th out of 128 shows that season. The X-Files built its audience through something that had never driven television viewership before: the internet. Fans calling themselves X-Files reviewed episodes on early websites, exchanged theories through Usenet newsgroups, and wrote fiction expanding the show's mythology. The cult following that formed in 1993 and 1994 eventually propelled the series to mainstream success, multiple Emmy wins, and 2 theatrical films. The television landscape that existed on December 31, 1993, bore almost no resemblance to what had existed 12 months earlier. Late-night television had been rebuilt around 2 competing hosts, one an established star, one fighting for survival. The most controversial drama in broadcast history had proven that audiences would embrace challenging content if the storytelling justified the risks. A Japanese import had demonstrated that children's programming could generate billions in merchandise revenue. A science fiction series was building an audience through a computer network that most Americans had never accessed. Seinfeld had ascended to the position that would make it the defining comedy of the decade. Star Trek had proven that its universe could sustain darker, more complex storytelling. The internet had emerged as a force that could sustain television properties and build communities around shared obsessions. The executives, writers, and performers who shaped 1993 could not have predicted how their work would influence the decades that followed. Stephen Bochco's boundary-pushing drama paved the way for The Sopranos and prestige cable television. The X-Files online fandom established the template for every passionate fan community that followed. Conan O'Brien survived his near cancellation to host late-night television for nearly 30 years. Every Super Bowl halftime show since 1993 has attempted to replicate what Michael Jackson achieved at the Rose Bowl. 1993 television broke rules that the industry had considered unbreakable, and in doing so, wrote the rules that would govern the medium for decades to come. For those who lived through 1993, these shows and moments shaped Thursday nights, Friday evenings, and Saturday mornings in ways that still resonate. Whether it was rushing home from school to catch Power Rangers, staying up late to watch Letterman's CBS debut, or gathering around the television for that Oprah interview, the year left its mark on an entire generation. The shows discussed here represent a fraction of what made 1993 extraordinary for television, and everyone who watched remembers their own moments differently. What television memory from 1993 has stayed with you the longest? Share your stories in the comments, and if you found value in this look back at a pivotal year, consider subscribing for more explorations of the moments that shaped our media landscape.